So one night, this guy comes home, and his entire house has been trashed, like someone broke in. And then all of a sudden, bam, an intruder grabs him from behind. And then another intruder pulls out a knife, and they force him to his knees. And that is when one of them pulls out a pew-pew, and he points it at the man's head, and he pulls the trigger. So the guy who pulled the trigger, his name's Billy, and he's only 15, about to be 16, and one day he's at school. And his school makes all the students do these dumb drug awareness rallies, so he's got to go there with his whole class, and it's so lame. But then, while he's there, he notices the media director, this woman, Pamela. And Pamela is 22, and Billy thinks she is fine. So they meet, and they get to talking, and they hit it off, and they're both really into 80s hair metal, so that's cool. And Billy and Pamela become friends, and he starts crushing on her hard. But as much as Billy's in love with her, she's actually married to this guy, Greg. And Pamela and Greg have only been married about a year, and unfortunately, it's not going too well. Because one day, Pamela finds out that Greg has been cheating on her. And she is devastated. She doesn't know what to do. And she doesn't want to get a divorce. She's worried she'll lose her condo and her dog. I mean, she's worried she'll lose everything. But shortly after she discovers that affair, that's when Pamela meets Billy. And they become friends, and they start hanging out. And eventually, Pamela, maybe to get back at Greg, she starts smashing with Billy. And then weeks later, this affair is still going on. And as they continue smashing, Pamela starts to get worried that Greg is going to find out, and that then he'll divorce her and she'll lose everything. So then Pamela comes up with a plan to get rid of Greg for good. And with this plan, she goes to Billy, and she starts telling him that Greg has been abusive, and that she can't divorce him because then he'll get mad and retaliate. And most importantly, she says that she just wishes there was someone who could unalive him. And of course, Billy, who's very much in love, he hears this, and he agrees to be that someone. Now, Billy, he isn't really a killer. And he has a lot of trouble bringing himself to do this. So he asks his friend Patrick to come along and help him. And then Patrick agrees, and Pamela lays down a plan. And she sets an actual date for the unaliving to happen. May 1st. So then, boom, May 1st comes along. And as planned, Billy and Patrick, they break into Greg and Pamela's condo. And then they trash the whole place to make it look like a robbery. And then they both wait there in the dark for Greg to come home. And then sometime later, he does. Greg finally arrives. He parks his car, he walks in the front door, and then all of a sudden, bam, Billy grabs him from behind. And Patrick, he pulls out a knife, and they quickly get Greg to his knees. And that is when Billy points the pew-pew at Greg's head, and he pulls the trigger. And later that night, Pamela gets home, and she finds Greg there on the floor, unalived. And she pretends to be surprised, and she calls police, and the police, they start investigating. And so then weeks go by, and police so far haven't made any arrests. Now, Billy and Patrick and their friends, they aren't very good at keeping secrets. So they start gossiping about it. And word gets around school, and soon enough, one of their classmates hits up police and tells them everything. So police bring in Billy and Patrick, and they question them, and these poor guys, they immediately crack under pressure, and they tell police the whole thing, including that Pamela was actually the mastermind behind the murder. So now police know that Pamela's involved, but they have to prove it. Otherwise, it's just Billy and Patrick's word against hers. Now, that classmate that had hit up police and snitched also mentioned the name of this girl, Cecilia. Cecilia is also 16, she goes to their school, and she's also Pamela's student intern, so she works with her. She also just happens to be Pamela's friend, because I guess 22-year-old Pamela just likes hanging out with high school students. But anyway, police find this out, and they approach Cecilia, and they scare her. And she breaks down, and she admits that she low-key knew about this murder plot the whole time. And in exchange for immunity, she agrees to wear a wire to get a confession from Pamela. So Cecilia meets up with Pamela, and of course Pamela incriminates herself on tape, and so boom, they arrest her. Here's her mugshot. And also, while we're at it, here's Billy's mugshot. And of course, here's Patrick's mugshot. So Pamela ends up going to trial, she's found guilty, and she gets sentenced to life. While Billy, he cooperated, and he gets sentenced to 40 years. And he only did 25, and he's out now. Well, Patrick also cooperated, and he also got 40 years. And he also only did 25, and he's out now. So, shout out to New Hampshire.